They took her stage, her music, and her dream, right in front of everyone. Kaia Mercer didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply walked away and built something they could never take again. This is her story. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The lights felt warmer than usual that night. Golden and soft, they spilled across the old wooden stage of Harmony Academy like a gentle embrace. I stood there, Kaia Mercer, my heart still beating fast from the final notes we had just sung together. Below me, more than 200 faces looked up with shining eyes. Parents wiped happy tears from their cheeks. Children shifted excitedly in their folding chairs, still humming the melody we had practiced for months in this little school I built from nothing. For one beautiful, perfect moment, everything felt like it had been worth it. This place, Harmony Academy, started in a freezing garage with leaky roofs and secondhand pianos. 7 long years of late nights, scraped together budgets, and endless belief. Now it was real. It mattered. These kids had found their voices here, their confidence, their light. I smiled, taking it all in, letting the applause wash over me like warm waves. Then the side door creaked open. Ronan Vale stepped into the light first. Tall and sure, wearing that familiar half-smile I once trusted with my whole heart. Right behind him came Indigo Voss, her dark hair sleek and perfect, carrying a thin black folder like it was something precious. The clapping slowly faded. People leaned forward, curious and smiling, expecting maybe a thank you speech or a surprise announcement. Ronan walked straight toward me. His steps were calm, too calm. He reached out and gently took the microphone from my hand. His fingers brushed mine for half a second, and something cold twisted in my chest. A quiet warning. A flicker of fear I tried to push away. He turned to face the audience, his voice smooth and warm, like honey over broken glass. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming tonight. What an incredible evening this has been. He paused. The room grew quieter, almost still. My breath caught. Indigo and I are proud to announce that we have officially acquired Harmony Academy. Starting next month, this wonderful school will continue under new ownership and a bold new vision. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered. A child asked their mom what was happening. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Ronan didn't look at me. Not yet. He kept his eyes on the audience, calm as ever. And because the soul of this academy has always been the original music created right here, we've taken the necessary steps to properly secure the copyrights. Every single piece Kaia has written over the past 7 years is now officially registered, under our names. The words landed like stones in still water. My hands dropped to my sides, heavy and useless. The microphone was still live, picking up every shallow breath I took. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, parents who had trusted me with their children, kids who called me Miss Kaia after every class, teachers who had stayed late with me through freezing winters and broke summers. They were watching me lose everything I had built, right here. On the stage I had sanded with my own hands, Indigo stepped forward beside Ronan. She placed one hand lightly on his arm, the same arm I used to fall asleep against on so many quiet nights. Her smile was gentle, almost kind, as if this were all perfectly normal. Ronan finally turned his gaze toward me. For the briefest moment, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Hesitation? Regret? It was gone before I could hold on to it. He leaned back toward the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. Thank you, Kaia, for laying the foundation. He smiled, that same smile I had once believed in completely. Now, we'll take it to the next level. The words echoed through the speakers, loud and final. Thank you, Kaia, for laying the foundation. Now we'll take it to the next level. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. 7 years. Every melody written at 2 a.m. when the rest of the town was sleeping. Every child who learned they were enough because of these songs. Every dream I had poured into these walls, stolen, in front of everyone. I stood frozen under the warm stage lights, my knees weak, while the man I once planned a life with and the woman I once called a close friend calmly took my entire world. The microphone stayed on, and the whole room heard the exact moment my heart broke wide open. This is the story of how the people I trusted most destroyed my dream in public, and how I learned to rise again, stronger and wiser than before. The applause had long faded, but the echo of Ronan's words still rang in my ears like a broken chord that wouldn't resolve. 48 hours later, I stood alone in the empty studio of Harmony Academy. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, cold and indifferent, falling across the bare floors where children once sat cross-legged singing my songs. The walls felt strangely hollow now. My fingers trailed over the faded paint I had chosen myself, soft sage green, the color of new beginnings. Everything had to go. I moved slowly, folding sheet music into cardboard boxes with hands that still trembled. Each stack of papers felt heavier than the last. These were not just notes on a page. They were late nights when I believed music could heal anything. They were the laughter of little voices learning they were worthy. They were me. The side door opened with a soft creak. Lila stepped in first, my younger sister, suitcase still in hand, eyes red from the red-eye flight from Boston. She didn't say anything at first. She just crossed the room and pulled me into a tight hug. Her coat smelled like airport coffee and winter air. For a moment, I let myself lean into her, the way I used to when we were kids, and the world felt too big. "I'm here," she whispered against my hair. "You don't have to do this alone." Behind her came Evelyn Harper, my old mentor, 72 years young, carrying a small tin box tied with twine. She moved with that quiet strength I had always admired. She set the box on the piano bench and opened it. The smell of warm cinnamon rolls and fresh blueberry muffins filled the studio. "Eat something, child," Evelyn said softly, her voice rough but kind. "Even when the world burns down, the body still needs fuel." I tried to smile. It came out broken. We worked in silence for a while. Lila sorted through bookshelves. Evelyn carefully wrapped fragile metronomes in old towels. I stood at the center of it all, staring at the grand piano in the corner, the one I had saved for months to buy. Memories kept slipping in unwanted. The way Ronan used to sit right there on that bench, listening to me play new pieces with that proud look in his eyes. The way Indigo would laugh and say my music had real soul. Now those same two people had taken it all. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay on the old couch in the corner of the studio, staring at the ceiling cracks I knew by heart. Anger rose first, hot and sharp, burning in my throat like unshed tears. How could he? How could they stand on that stage and smile while ripping my life apart in front of everyone I cared about? Then the anger cracked open and the pain poured in, deep, aching pain that made my chest feel too small. I had trusted him with my dreams. I had trusted her with my friendship, and they had looked me in the eye and chose to take everything. I got up in the dark, hands shaking, and gathered every single sheet of original music I had left. One by one, I fed them into the small metal trash can in the corner. The match flared bright. Flames licked at the edges of the paper, curling my careful notes into black ash. I watched them burn until my eyes stung. Tears came then, ugly, gasping sobs that tore out of me until I had nothing left. I slid down the wall, knees to my chest, crying until my throat was raw. The kind of crying that leaves you hollow. The kind that makes you wonder if you were ever enough to begin with. Was my music really that easy to steal? Was I really that easy to replace? Lila found me there at dawn. She didn't speak. She simply sat beside me on the cold floor and rested her head against my shoulder. Evelyn arrived an hour later with fresh coffee and quiet words. "You're allowed to fall apart, Kaia," she said, her voice steady and honest. "But don't you dare believe their version of your worth. They took the papers. They didn't take your soul." Her words hurt and healed at the same time. By the end of the third day, the studio was nearly empty. I sold almost everything, Desks, chairs, bookshelves, even the colorful rugs the children loved. The money felt meaningless in my hands. In the end, I kept only one thing, the old upright piano from the very first garage days. Scratched, out of tune in places, but still standing. I arranged for it to be shipped ahead. As I locked the studio door for the last time, the click sounded final. Heavy. Lakeside had been my home, my dream, my everything. Now it was just another town I needed to leave behind. I climbed into the car with Lila beside me, the winter sky gray and low overhead. As we drove past the sign that read, "Welcome to Lakeside," something inside me shifted. Not hope yet, not strength, just a quiet, exhausted decision. I was done breaking here, somewhere ahead, in a city far from Ronan Vale and Indigo Voss, and the ashes of everything I once loved. Maybe I could figure out how to breathe again. This is the story of how losing everything almost destroyed me, and how the smallest sparks of human kindness kept me from disappearing completely. The mountains rose sharp and snow-dusted against a wide Colorado sky as I drove into Denver. The air felt different here, thinner, colder, carrying the faint scent of pine and possibility. I had left Lakeside behind with nothing but a battered upright piano, 2 suitcases, and a heart that still ached every time it beat. For the first few weeks, I moved through the days like a ghost. Then one gray Tuesday afternoon, I walked into the Community Hope Center on the east side of the city. The building was old, paint peeling in places, but the laughter spilling from the music room felt alive. I offered to teach piano and songwriting for free. No fees, no fancy curriculum, just music for kids who needed it most. Children from low-income neighborhoods, kids in foster care, little ones carrying silence too heavy for their small shoulders. They let me start the very next day. The first session was messy. Fingers stumbled on keys, voices cracked on high notes. A 10-year-old girl named Sophie cried halfway through because she was afraid of making mistakes. I sat beside her on the piano bench, my own hands still shaky from everything I had lost. "It's okay to sound broken," I whispered. "That's where the real songs begin." In the back of the room, leaning against the doorframe with quiet observation, stood Soren Hale. He was the center's child psychologist. Tall, steady, with calm gray eyes that seemed to see more than most people wanted to show. At first, he was just another colleague. He would nod politely when our paths crossed in the hallway, sometimes leave a fresh cup of coffee on my desk without a word. But slowly, without either of us planning it, he became something more. After a particularly difficult session with a boy who refused to speak, Soren stayed behind. He didn't offer advice. He simply sat on the edge of the stage while I played soft chords on the old piano, letting the music fill the empty space between us. "You don't teach them to be perfect," he said quietly one evening, his voice low and thoughtful. "You teach them it's safe to try." I looked at him then, really looked, and felt something fragile stir inside my chest. Not love. Not yet. Just the smallest sense that maybe I wasn't completely alone anymore. One cold Saturday morning, as I was unpacking new songbooks, the door burst open. Miles Thompson walked in, 17 now, taller than I remembered, with the same restless energy but clearer eyes. He was leading a small group of teenagers from his neighborhood. "Miss Kaia?" His voice cracked with surprise and something like relief. I froze, sheet music slipping from my fingers. Miles had been one of my first students back in Lakeside, a quiet boy who used to sit in the back row, angry at the world. Now here he was, standing taller, smiling like he carried light inside him. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled me into a hug that nearly knocked the breath out of me. "You have no idea how many of us made it because of you," he said, voice thick. "The songs you taught us, they kept some of us going when nothing else did. I brought a few friends. They need what you gave me." I couldn't speak for a long moment. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the faces behind him, kids with guarded eyes and careful postures, the kind I used to see in my old studio. That afternoon, We didn't practice perfect scales. We sat in a circle on the worn carpet, and I asked them to tell me what hurt. Then I asked them to turn that hurt into sound. No right or wrong notes, just honest ones. For the first time since the recital, I picked up a pencil and paper again. The melodies that came were different now, rougher, gentler. They didn't chase beauty or perfection. They chased healing. Small, honest phrases that said, "You are not alone," and "It's okay to feel this." Late one night, after everyone had gone home, I sat at my old upright piano in the tiny apartment I rented. My fingers moved slowly across the keys. A simple four-chord progression emerged, fragile but steady. Soren had stopped by with takeout earlier. He was still there, reading quietly in the corner armchair, giving me space, but staying close enough that I didn't feel the weight of the silence. I played the new melody softly, letting it breathe. For the first time in months, the music didn't feel like loss. It felt like breathing again. The fire inside me wasn't roaring yet. It was only a small, flickering flame, but it was there, warm, persistent, refusing to die. I glanced over at Soren. He looked up from his book, and for a quiet moment our eyes held. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. In losing everything back in Lakeside, I had been forced to discover what I still carried inside. Not the building, not the copyrights, not even the old version of my dreams. Just the music, and the quiet, stubborn belief that it could still matter. This is the story of how hitting rock bottom showed me what I was truly made of, and how sometimes the smallest new beginning can grow into something beautiful. 6 months had slipped by like quiet snowfall in Denver. The days had grown steadier, the nights less heavy. I was still teaching at the Community Hope Center, still learning how to breathe without the sharp edge of old pain cutting through every inhale. The small flame inside me had grown, not into a wildfire, but into something warm and constant. Then one ordinary Thursday afternoon, everything changed again. I had been sitting at the old upright piano with a small group of children. Among them was little Jonah, a quiet 8-year-old boy with autism who rarely spoke above a whisper. That day, as I played a simple, gentle melody I had written weeks earlier, something shifted. Jonah stood up slowly, walked to the piano, and for the first time, he sang. His voice was soft, unsteady, but unmistakably his own. The other kids fell quiet, watching in wonder. I kept playing, tears gathering in my eyes as his small voice joined mine. One of the staff members filmed the moment on her phone. Just a short, unpolished clip. No fancy lighting, no perfect sound, just raw, honest connection. By evening, the video had exploded. 12 million views in less than 24 hours. Comments poured in from all over the country, parents thanking me, musicians sharing their own stories of healing, strangers saying the clip had made them cry in their cars. The caption was simple: "Music when words are too heavy." I sat on my couch that night, phone glowing in my hands, watching the numbers climb with a strange mix of disbelief and quiet awe. Soren sat beside me, one hand resting lightly on my back. He didn't speak much. He never needed to. His steady presence said enough. Miles had shown up earlier with pizza, grinning like he had won the lottery. "This is what you always gave us, Miss Kaia. They're finally seeing it." But not everyone was celebrating. Far away in Lakeside, Ronan Vale and Indigo Voss were preparing for the grand opening of their new academy, Nova Harmony. Sleek marketing materials, big announcements, polished social media campaigns. They had poured months into building what they believed would be the next big thing. Until the video appeared. Suddenly, their comment sections filled with questions. Where is the original teacher? Why does this feel like the real Harmony Academy? How could you erase the woman who started it all? The backlash grew louder by the hour. Articles began appearing online, comparing the warm, healing energy in my simple Denver clip with the glossy corporate image of Nova Harmony. People were connecting the dots. Ronan and Indigo panicked. The first email arrived late that same night, polite, professional, from Ronan's personal address. Kaia, we've seen the video. It's beautiful. We'd love to talk about ways we can work together moving forward. Perhaps licensing some of your earlier pieces at a fair rate. I read it once, then deleted it. 2 days later, a formal letter came through a lawyer. They offered a substantial sum for several of my old compositions, the ones they now legally owned. To resolve any lingering concerns amicably, the letter said. I stared at the paper for a long time, fingers tracing the edges. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me felt nothing at all. The old wound throbbed, but it no longer controlled me. I didn't reply. Instead, that weekend, I focused on what mattered. Together with Soren and Miles, we organized a small workshop at the center. Nothing flashy, just 20 kids, a few guitars, my old piano, and an afternoon filled with imperfect, honest music making. We laughed when notes went wrong. We sat in silence when feelings ran too deep. We created. On Sunday afternoon, Evelyn Harper flew in from Maine. She walked into the workshop carrying the same quiet strength I remembered, her silver hair catching the light. She didn't make a big entrance. She simply sat among the children, listening, occasionally humming along. Later that evening, she appeared on a local Denver podcast. Her voice was calm but unflinching as she told the truth about my journey. Not with anger, but with honest clarity. She spoke of the garage days, the stolen dreams, and the quiet resurrection happening here in Colorado. She never named Ronan or Indigo directly. She didn't need to. The story spread gently, like ripples on still water. That night, as snow began to fall softly outside my apartment window, I sat at the piano once more. Soren was in the kitchen making tea. Miles had gone home with a new song half-written. Evelyn rested in the guest room, tired but peaceful. I played a new melody, slow, thoughtful, born from everything I had lost and everything I was beginning to find again. The silence I had carried for so long was turning into something else. Not revenge, not bitterness, just strength. Quiet, undeniable strength. I no longer needed to prove anything to the people who had tried to erase me. My music was speaking for itself, not through polished productions or stolen copyrights, but through the hearts it was still touching, one honest note at a time. This is the story of how silence can become the loudest kind of power, and how true success is never about destroying those who hurt you, but about continuing to create, even when they thought they had ended you. A year had passed since the video changed everything. The seasons had turned, and so had something deep inside me. I no longer woke up reaching for the pieces of a life that had been taken. Instead, I woke up reaching for the music that had never truly left. The invitation came quietly at first, an email from the National Music Education Conference in Chicago. They wanted me as the closing keynote speaker. I almost said no. The thought of standing in front of thousands of people again sent a familiar chill through my chest. But Soren sat with me at the kitchen table that night, his hand covering mine, and simply said, "This time, the stage is yours, not theirs." So I went. Chicago in early winter was crisp and bright. The conference hall buzzed with energy as I stepped onto the main stage. Rows of seats stretched out before me like a sea of quiet expectation. I spoke about the Resonance program, my new initiative that combined music education with child psychology for children carrying deep emotional wounds. The words came slowly, carefully, born from every hard lesson I had learned in the past year. Behind the curtain, Soren stood watching, his calm presence steadying me even from a distance. In the front row, Lila sat beside Evelyn Harper, both of them smiling with quiet pride. On stage with me, Miles Thompson led a small group of my Denver students in a simple, heartfelt performance. Their voices weren't perfect, but they were real. The audience listened in rapt silence. As the applause faded after the performance, I returned to the microphone for my closing remarks. My hands rested lightly on the wooden stand. I took a slow breath. Then I saw them. Near the back of the hall, standing close to an exit door, were Ronan Vale and Indigo Voss. They looked smaller than I remembered. Ronan's shoulders were tense. Indigo kept adjusting the strap of her bag, eyes scanning the crowd nervously. They had come hoping for a public reconciliation, perhaps an invitation to collaborate, anything to salvage their fading reputation as the backlash continued to grow. Our eyes met for one brief moment across the distance. I felt a flicker of the old pain, sharp, familiar, but no longer consuming. There was no rage, no desire to confront them, only a quiet understanding that their chapter in my story had already ended. I turned my gaze back to the audience and spoke gently, my voice steady and clear. A few years ago, I lost everything I thought defined me. Someone I trusted stood on my stage and told the world my music now belonged to them. They took the notes, the copyrights, the name I had built with my own hands. A soft murmur moved through the crowd. I spent many nights believing that was the end of me, but here's what I learned in the ashes. Music can be bought, sold, and even stolen, but its soul cannot. I paused, letting the words settle. The soul lives in the hands of a child who finally finds their voice. It lives in the quiet moments when someone chooses to create again, not because the world is watching, but because healing demands it. The real work isn't about protecting what we build. It's about continuing to build, even when the world tries to erase us. No names, no accusations, just truth. The hall remained silent for a long heartbeat, then erupted in warm, sustained applause. I stepped back from the microphone as the lights dimmed. Ronan and Indigo slipped out through the side doors without a word, their faces pale, their shoulders heavy. They left the hall in silence, carrying the weight of choices they could no longer undo. Later that evening, I returned to my small studio in Denver. Snow was falling softly outside the tall windows, blanketing the city in quiet white. The old upright piano stood in the corner, scratched, imperfect, and still mine. I sat down on the bench and let my fingers find the keys. A completely new melody rose beneath my hands, slow, tender, full of everything I had become. It carried the ache of loss, the warmth of new beginnings, and the steady rhythm of healing. I didn't play for an audience, I played for myself. Soren walked in quietly and stood behind me. He placed one gentle hand on my shoulder, his touch warm and sure. I leaned back slightly, resting against him as the music continued to flow. Through the window, soft snowflakes drifted past the streetlights like tiny stars. Lila had already flown home, promising to visit again soon. Evelyn had left with a long hug and the words, "You did it, child. You really did it." Miles had texted a simple message. "Proud of you, Miss Kaia." In that quiet moment, with Soren's hand on my shoulder and the new melody filling the room, I felt it clearly. I had reclaimed what was never truly lost. Not the building, not the old songs, not even the recognition. I had reclaimed myself. And in doing so, I had stepped into a version of my life so full and alive that Ronan and Indigo no longer had any place in it. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about making them suffer. It was about becoming someone so rooted in purpose and peace that their actions could no longer touch the song inside me. This is the story of how the deepest revenge is simply becoming the best version of yourself, so completely that those who once tried to break you no longer have a seat in your story. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for being here and letting this story live within your heart. If it moved you, I hope you'll walk beside us through more journeys of the Wild West, stories filled with truth, endurance, and grace. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay close. Together we'll keep riding across these wide-open lands of memory and hope. Thank you. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. Our narratives bring inspiration from the past, recreated with fictional and dramatized interpretations for entertainment purposes only. AI tools serve as creative support, but the storytelling, editing, and emotional refinement are handled by our team to guarantee authenticity. We comply with content policies for AI use, avoiding impersonations, identity fabrication, or historically misleading images. All visual and audio content is legally sourced. Redistribution or modification requires prior written approval. Thank you for honoring creativity, collaboration, and storytelling done with heart.